morning. Well, to anyone who's been here all week like me, thanks for waking up this morning and coming here. To everyone just arriving, welcome. My name is Brian Passman. Kevin gave a great intro. I think we're going to cover more high-level businessy topics here. My qualifications are being a headhunter for the past 23 years, an executive recruiter for life science companies, the first 15, a little bit of a detour into CPG, and then starting a small search firm 6 years ago to bring leaders into cannabis companies, and then branching out into serving the psychedelics industry as well a couple of years ago. And I'm really excited to be here. Thanks, Benzinga. I got to help open up last year's first psychedelics conference. That was special. Being up here with my esteemed panelists is extra special. Also special for me today, just want to give a little shout out to my mother. Today would have been her 71st birthday. She passed 20 years ago, and I really think that her mental health conditions that turned into her physical health challenges could have been remedied, dealt with almost certainly more effectively if we had been where we are now some years ago. So today's extra special. And without any further ado, I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves, starting with you, Najla.
Thank you, Brian. Najla Guthrie, I'm the CEO of Wellbeing Digital Sciences, as well as the CEO of KGK Science. Wellbeing Digital Science is an evidence-based mental health care company. My background is I founded KGK Science, which is a clinical research organization. And we started out 25 years ago. I spun that out of the university in London, Ontario, Canada, and in another industry very similar to this industry today, and that was the natural products industry. 25 years ago, no one appreciated science in the natural products industry. We had all kinds of claims and products coming to market with all kinds of outrageous claims. Doctors and the medical establishment thinking all of these were snake oils. The public and the consumer were very interested in those products because they wanted to prevent disease and they wanted to, really have an overall health and well-being and be in control of that for themselves. So, I saw an opportunity, spun the company out, wanted to base that in science. You fast forward to today, and I'm very proud to say that a lot of the products that you see on your shelf today at Walgreens and CVS and our company has had a hand in substantiating the claims, the safety and efficacy of those claims. Now, I saw another opportunity here in the psychedelic medicine industry, and we're at the beginning. I'm really excited. I was talking to Brian just a little bit previously here while we were getting ready, and I'm so excited to be part of an industry here that can have such an impact on mental health and an area of medicine where there haven't really been much new developments. And I'm excited to provide the evidence. I'm excited to be part of that revolution and to make sure that it's science-based.
Fantastic. Cody, tell us about yourself.
Managing partner at Ambria Capital, also the chairman of HealingMaps.com and the president of, I think, the first psychedelic-based REIT. Listen, I'm excited for the industry. It's grown a lot over the last couple of years. I think it still has a lot more growing to do. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Excellent. Natalie.
Hi, my name is Natalie Lila Ginsberg. I've been lucky enough to work at MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, for almost a decade. I first founded the policy team and served as a director of policy and advocacy for almost 6 years. Now I work as the global impact officer, working to responsibly integrate psychedelics into our mainstream culture. I've also co-founded the Jewish Psychedelic Summit, and I initiated MAP's Health Equity Program. And maybe I'll leave it at that. I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you. Simeon.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Simeon. I'm a managing partner of JLS Fund. We invest at the exciting intersection of psychedelics and technology. I am here on this panel because I've been doing psychedelics since I was first introduced to Robert Masters and Gene Houston who wrote a phenomenal book, Varieties of Psychedelic Experiences. When I was but a teen, and we were mostly working with LSD, we got from Albert Hoffman, who I got to spend time with in Basel in his later years. So for 30 years, I've been kind of waiting for this time in history. There's a forthcoming article coming out where the reporter called me and she's like, I'm going to requote you. And I'm like, requote me? How is this journalism? And she became a friend, and it might have been off the record, but the quote is, Simeon, a founding member of JLS, appreciates two things: healing modalities and mental health indications, and early stage entrepreneurship and capital markets. But my original quote was, since I could remember, I've always loved two things: drugs and money. So with that being said, very excited to be on this panel talking about the intersection of both in Psychedelics 101. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, and some rock and roll. So let's just stay with you, Simeon. So you participated in cannabis and psychedelics industries, just wrapping up 2 days of Cannabis Capital Conference. Can you just talk a little bit about what you think are the key differences between the two industries and how we've gotten to where we are? What's different about how it feels today? And if you want to make a prediction about where they'll continue to diverge or converge?
Well, with 29 minutes and 52 seconds left, looking at the clock, I'll do my best. But no, I was immersed in cannabis. I think my earliest days in cannabis was selling dime bags in high school. Then, I opened my first dispensary in 2007. It was the world's first psychedelic art gallery and medical marijuana dispensary in Venice. A multi-year experience where we obviously sold a lot of weed and sold a lot of art, but also became a container to talk about Psychedelics 101 in a sense. It was a really difficult business. I mean, I think I was ranked top dispensary 7 months in a row. And at the end of every month, and we were killing it. It was like, wow, how did we just make rent? So one of the things is, and to answer your question explicitly, it's playing out as a very different path. There is some CPG on the side of psychedelics, but that's pretty much gray, or the few jurisdictions, and it's becoming much more of an FDA regulated path to be inculcated into the same healthcare system, whether you love it or not, with insurance and FDA approvals and just society's kind of acceptance of it. So that's the biggest divergent thing. We're not going to be walking into a dispensary anytime soon and buying DMT or ayahuasca or any psychedelic. Although I live in New York, so I've noticed a crazy, the bodega around the corner from where I live. This just happened 2 days ago. So New York, legalized cannabis. And of course, everyone thought that was, okay, great, I'm going to start selling cannabis. So I'm in my local bodega, and really nice guy, Raj Pool, who I've been buying, Diet Dr. Pepper from for years, or milk if, the stores are closed. And I had been on the road a bit, and he had an entire shelf now dedicated to cannabis. And it was all the top brands you see in LA and elsewhere. And I go, what's going on? And he goes, this is, marijuana. And I go, what? Don't you have to have a license? He's like, well, I don't know. And the vendors come to me, super sweet guy. And I go, well, let me buy. So I wound up buying like $800 worth of product. Got some of it tested because there were some brands that were off label. And he was like, I'm like, oh, I'm having trouble sleeping. He's like, oh, you definitely want Sativa. And
Of course.
so anyway, it's just an interesting anecdote that when things arise, you'll find these gray areas, even though there's licensure, and New York's in its own world of getting through it all, and it'll be bumpy. But just to answer your question, and I'm sorry I haven't yet, there'll be two very different industries. I kind of bucket cannabis in, at least from the capital perspective, as a consumer goods play and psychedelics into very medicalized and/or everything that we're talking about related to mental health indications. Wow, I took 10 minutes to answer a 4-second question. Sorry.
I enjoyed it. Please, Natalie.
Yeah, I might jump in there that certainly right now the psychedelic industry is leading with the medical side of things, the research. That's certainly MAPS's focus. But MAPS also works beyond developing medical contexts to develop legal and cultural contexts. And as we're seeing across the US, states and localities are starting to decriminalize and actually create new regulated frameworks for psychedelic use. So I'm going to push back and say I do hope in the next few years we might be able to purchase psychedelics outside of the legal medical frameworks as well. Certainly the industry will be progressing in a very different way than cannabis because, as you mentioned, cannabis really moved forward state by state on the medical level. Though, of course, there are a few FDA-approved medical-based products and cannabis-based products. They're not, smoked flower, for example, yet. But I really am hopeful that we will not forget that many people need to have access to psychedelics outside of the medical framework. We live in a country, unfortunately, where most people do not most, but many people do not have access to health insurance and to other parts of medical care. And no one should be being incarcerated for using any of these substances. So it's really essential that as we're moving forward in this medical industry, that we're not neglecting those who operate outside of the medical framework, and that we're simultaneously working to end the war on drugs and really the war on people who use substances.
Either of you want to touch that question? Okay.
It was covered well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I've been involved in both industries, and I think when you look at the psychedelic industry, at the beginning, a lot of the investors that came into the space really thought it was going to be cannabis 2.0. They thought it was going to be a cannabis play. It's not a cannabis play. These medicines are not cannabis, and I think we missed the boat on cannabis because there's lots of medical uses that could have been explored that haven't been because people are self-medicating. Because you can walk into any dispensary and you've read something that this particular product helps or this combination helps sleep or pain, and you self-medicate. We can't do that in psychedelic medicine, and we shouldn't do that in psychedelic medicine. I think, I'm pretty passionate about lobbying government, both in Canada and in the US, to make sure that the policy that is rolled out is evidence-based and data-driven. And I think that's the difference here. If we bring these products to market the right way with the data, let the data guide us, then they're going to be safe and efficacious, and they are going to be available to the people that need them the most. Whereas you've kind of curbed R&D on the cannabis side because it's a consumer goods play as opposed to a medicinal play.
Can't agree more. Thank you, Cody. So you as a very busy, prolific entrepreneur, investor in the space, wondering what you look for, what you would share to investors here looking at plays in psychedelics and what types of companies you get excited about and believe in.
I think there's probably going to be two classes. You're going to have the infrastructure side, clinic, retreats, things like that. And then the drug development side, I mean, if you're going to play in that world, you better buckle up. It's going to be a long ride. I think most of the companies, probably 80-90% of them, aren't going to make it to where MAPS is. I mean, it's a very capital intensive, and listen, results are going to vary for each of these indications and molecules. It's, the safe play in my mind would probably be the clinical infrastructure, whether it's MDMA or USONA or Compass with psilocybin. But then I also think it's important to talk about outside of the medicalized setting. People have been using these things for thousands of years. So I think that there's going to be a space for the retreat side as well. So I think it just depends kind of what, if you're looking for that home run, the drug development's probably going to be there for you, but you're prepared to lose a lot of money, and it's going to be a long time. But the stable long-term asset class, I think, is going to be the clinical infrastructure or the retreats.
Thank you. Anyone want to add to that? Simeon?
Sure, I would agree with everything Cody shared, yeah, our fund is heavily weighted in drug development right now. So we're, expecting to find returns for investors 5-10 years out at the earliest. It's just an incredibly long, expensive process. I think there's one other area which has been touched upon. We've done a lot of wearables, a lot of virtual reality. There's a big tech component since tech is kind of taking over everything. And with AI and brain to computer interface and everything around that, I think we're going to see that as another sector that has that Venn diagram with psychedelics that we're going to look at and proposes to offer some of the same solutions around, feeling happy and better and more fulfilled in life.
Fantastic. Things to look forward to. Want to add to that, Natalie or Najla?
Yes, I'll just say a word on the tech support side that it is really exciting and there's so much innovation that could really help support people's mental health. And I am seeing some people kind of pursuing paths that eliminate therapeutic support from human beings in psychedelic experiences and are seeking to kind of replace that with technology. And I admit I have some apprehensions there. I'm really proud that MAPS has developed a protocol that's therapy intensive and works actually with 2 therapists to support one person through their MDMA therapy process. And the therapeutic relationship is such a key part of the healing, not only during the psychedelic experience, but also preparing for it and integrating it afterward. And so often people who are struggling with mental health are struggling with connection to other people and to community. So I do have some fears about what that looks like to say, actually, it's cheaper to get rid of paying a person. Let's just give you a computer or a bot to do therapy back to you. And again, making things accessible and more cost effective gives more people access. So I'm absolutely not against it full sale. I just really ask us to be deeply mindful and to really value the person's role as a therapist and as a support. And I really don't think that's easily replaceable. I'm really excited about technology that could support the person as a therapist, making that more easy. Having 2 therapists is really expensive and difficult, but it's really hard to be one therapist holding space for 6 to 8 hours in a session. So I could see kind of one person working with technology or a range of different things. But let's not forget the human connection that is so key in psychedelic healing.
Can I comment on that just from just to applaud that and just reflecting on one nonprofit I'm a big fan of called Fireside Project, in which I used to, we also spend a lot of time with nonprofits and advocacy and Capitol Hill and just learning everything that would be true signals. But I was really surprised when the first data came back. I think it was about like 10,000 calls. And I used to, share with, other limited partners or other funds like, hey, we should support this nonprofit. And at the time, I was billing it as 1-800, I'm having a bad trip. Because people got it immediately. It's like, oh, okay, I'll give $100 or maybe a little more. And it helped there. But, when we dug into the data, it was really confounding because more than half of the calls were not from people having a bad trip or a trip at all. It was a week, a month, 3 months after someone had done a ketamine session and they had no integration and they had no support. And they're like, I just had this huge download, or I had this great experience, whether it was blissful or, challenging, and I need somebody to talk to. So when, I talk about technology, it's also looking at how, that's a great example, right, of, hey, they're doing this in a way that's scalable without therapists. That's really important, but with just peer support. And then I look at my own childhood and my own psychedelic experiences or anything. And it's always my friends or my family. So there could be a peer possibility with tech, and we're kind of already doing that. We're all on our phones, we're all in social media groups. It's peer support is so profound, and there's a way to look at these things that already happen and then figure out a way where tech, unlike a chatbot,
where I think Rick had a quote. I think it was, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it was a few years ago. And I think it was Rick, somebody from MAPS. It was something like, I predict we'll need even more trained human therapists for the PTSD from AI therapists or something like that. So we're not there, and we'll never get there unless we all merge into the singularity. But tech could be a really nuanced thing. Sometimes just a little tech in something that we've been doing since the beginning of time to accelerate. In that case, peer support, which is incredibly effective, and how we've operated, whether it's in the cultural context of Indigenous or just how, there's a bunch of peer support even in this room to some extent. Anyway, I digress, and God, I keep on answering really long. I don't mean to do that.
A lot of good insights to share.
I'll keep it long. Keep it going here. I appreciate Cody bringing up retreats as well. And, psychedelic medicine has been stewarded by Indigenous communities for thousands and thousands of years. And the majority of communities that sit with these medicines sit in community, sit in circle. And today, when people are able to participate in ceremonies, you have kind of a built-in support network. Not every time, but often you kind of keep in touch with the people you sat with. You can text, there's like a group text. There's people beyond the one-on-one therapy relationship. So there really are more cost-effective models of integrating that into people's experiences. And it's deeply, deeply helpful in making these therapeutic experiences last and durable, and also teaching people how to build a different kind of life with their new realizations that involves community, and not just receiving support, but giving support, right? That dual relationship is such a key part of healing. And it's something that's so different than our current medical framework, right? That's very based on one-on-one experiences with doctors that are often saying what's going on with your ear, what's going on with your elbow, and aren't really looking at the holistic situation. So I think that's one of the most exciting parts, but also one of the trickiest parts of psychedelic medicine is understanding that it kind of challenges a lot of our current paradigms for mental health treatment and medical treatment overall. And I find it really fascinating to see how that can fit into our current system. It doesn't necessarily means an entirely different system, but I also don't think it means it can fit perfectly into what we have right now. So I'm personally most excited by companies and nonprofits like MAPS that are looking to really innovate within these systems and figure out how to be true to the best potential for psychedelic healing, and see how it can plug into our current setup.
So we're touching on a lot of good and challenging aspects to the industry, and maybe starting with you, Najla, being exposed to the clinical and the regulatory side, part of the industry that definitely excites me. It's very expensive. We can call that an obstacle to success. It's just in a capital crunched area that we're in now. Do you see with your partners and anyone else other obstacles to success for companies in psychedelics legislatively? People with maybe a lot of bad experiences with no integration, just other obstacles to success that we haven't touched on yet for people out here starting a business or trying to figure out where to invest?
No, that's a great question. And I think, the clinical aspect and gathering the data behind these medicines is an obstacle within itself. Like I said earlier, the initial investor that came into this thought it was going to be cannabis and thought it was going to be recreational. And I don't think that's the right play for the industry. Is it going to be through the FDA, only through the FDA path? Probably not. But that's a start. That's a great place to start. Will we have a dual system where you take the best of the indigenous ceremony and how they have used these medicines in a community setting with the support? I mean, we know already that just taking these medicines without the right setting, without the integration, is not as effective and can be harmful. So we really have to be mindful of all of that. And the regulatory framework, I think, we all have a responsibility in this industry to make sure that we lobby and that we talk to our regulators and to, the previous panel, I was really encouraged by what Brock said, that, you overcome fear with knowledge. Let's get the knowledge and let's educate the communities out there. Let's educate our politicians. Let's educate, our regulators to make sure that they're making decisions that are sound and that are based in data and that are based in evidence. I just met with the opposition leaders a couple of weeks ago in Canada, and met with the mental health critic as well. And they're very skeptical. They are very skeptical, and they're looking at me saying, "Don't oversell it." And I said, "Well, I'm not overselling it. I'm a scientist by training. I want the data, and I want the government. This isn't only an industry play. I want the government to have a hand in this and to actually." Help the support to gather this data, because if there is an IP around certain new innovations, a company isn't going to be funding that particular avenue. So we're looking, for example, at KGK, doing a community trial looking at addiction and looking at opioid addiction with psilocybin. And we're looking to fund it partly, but I want the government to fund it as well. And we're lobbying for that. And I encourage all of you to do the same, both in the US and in Canada, because, as I say to a lot of my colleagues and peers, this is beyond just one company. This is too important a mission for us as an industry, and we need to do it right.
Listen, cash is king. I mean, I think that there's going to be a giant, like just looking at the MAP situation, where's the infrastructure going to come from for these clinics? I mean, anybody, I think, in here that's had a psychedelic experience, being in a white hospital room, having that experience, probably not where you want it to take place. And then, the human connection, the therapist, there's still thousands of therapists that need to be trained. So I think that the time, the commitment to the training, and then the infrastructure is going to be a huge part. $2.9 billion has come into the space over the last 4 years. 97% of that has gone towards drug development and chasing that intellectual property, where the biggest part of the equation has been completely overlooked. So I think that that's going to be the story of the next 24 to 36 months is, let's just say approval does come, hopefully Q1 of next year, maybe Q2. There's a lot that needs to be done before that happens.
A lot of education to come.
I agree, and MAPS and many other groups have been working hard to train many therapists, and I agree we're going to need more supportive clinics. But I am encouraged that there are more and more ketamine-assisted therapy clinics popping up, and I know the ketamine clinic space is having a bit of a difficult moment right now, and certainly the majority of ketamine clinics actually do not offer adjunct psychotherapy, so they're not necessarily set up as we're hoping, but there are more and more ketamine clinics being set up by therapists who are also trained in MDMA therapy and psilocybin therapy. So that's my hope, that there are infrastructure spots right now and will continue to develop, and we will have clinics that will integrate a variety of different psychedelic medicine and won't necessarily just be an MDMA therapy clinic. And those spaces are out there and ready, but we definitely need more.
Simeon,
You're
good?
here.
Okay, you're still there. All right. So I'm in the human capital space. We're at a capital conference. Selfishly want to talk about human capital a little bit. And at the end of the day, these medicines are getting in people's hands, and integration's happening because of the people making it go, people like yourselves and everyone out here. Do any of you have insights to share on the human capital front as it relates to what type of people you see succeeding best, what characteristics, what traits drive people to success in your experience so far in the industry, for those here looking to hire or represent themselves well to get a role in the industry, or perform that diligence correctly on an investment when they're looking at the people part of it?
Sure, I'll start, and maybe I'll start with the most important person in this entire industry right now is the recruiter.
Thank you.
No, I'm kidding. But it is an important thing.
You're not wrong.
You know, if it wasn't for headhunters, there'd be no acceleration. No, but in
Have a
all
nice day, everybody.
seriousness, yeah, we spend a lot of time helping portfolio companies. You know, there's a whole list of whether it's chief science officer or which is the right CRO to partner with. If you're going to be doing any policy advocacy, is there someone you could find that is looking for that position who has 20 years of lobbying experience? So it's kind of all over the place. And I'll defer the rest of my time to my other colleagues.
I'm going to jump in. Listen, you have a lot of different verticals, right? You have scientists, you have therapists, you have people working with technology, the policy. It was really interesting. We were just in DC a month and a half ago. A lot of them are excited. The science, the data is very positive, but I think the stigma just from the last 50, 60 years is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to stamp their name on. So whether you're talking about doctors, therapists, people working in technology, I think a lot of people are still kind of nervous to take that leap. So you might not have, you know, in some instances, the best people in the room that you could have. I mean, so I think just, again, the education and, you know, the data, this policy side, it's very important. I mean, all these things have to work in unison for the industry to continue to grow and to have the best people available. So there's, every field still needs more.
Well, absolutely. I completely agree with you on the stigma, and especially on the politics side and the policy side.
Yeah.
You're right. They're hesitant to put their name behind it yet, and it's up to us to educate them. It's up to us to make sure that we do it right, and that, you know, the stigma is removed with knowledge, not you know, based on just hype. And that's, I think, what started to happen at the beginning with a lot of the investment that came in, but I think it's now getting weeded out. And your new investor is more of a biotech investor and more of a patient investor. And, you know, we are getting the data. The data that's emerging is really exciting. You know, some of it, you know, didn't come out that great yet. Some of it is fantastic. I mean, MAPS, I think the top line results were fantastic. And I think, you know, I'm hopeful that you're going to get approvals very soon. So all of that is really exciting, but I think knowledge is power, and we need to make sure that we invest to get the knowledge in order for us to make the right changes.
Amen to all of that. And not just something you said earlier about the importance of looking kind of beyond your company or your one company and looking at the whole field and understanding the grave importance of this broader work. I believe that's one of the things that makes individuals and their companies more successful when they have that broader view and they're genuinely working to support everyone moving forward, which I know, that's not always incentivized by our kind of business industry, but working at a nonprofit for a long time, we were able to help get this whole industry off the ground because we were supporting each other, different researchers, different educators. We worked as a team because we had this greater mission. So I believe that's a really key part of what makes someone successful in the human capital realm. And something else that might be a little unconventional to say is I do think it really helps to have some personal experience with these substances that you're dedicating, your whole work world to doing. It doesn't mean every single, person has to do that, but they really, having a personal experience just allows you to more deeply understand the kind of medicine that you're working to put forward into the world. And these medicines can have really profound effects on you as an individual. So I do tend to see that people who are more successful in this space are folks who've done not just, not to dismiss taking psychedelics in a party setting, by the way, which can be very valuable, but that's not the only thing I'm referring to, but people who have really done their own personal work, go to therapy, done some deep reflection, had some kind of more spiritual experiences. It has profound impacts on your business success as well.
Yeah. I know we look for people for, regardless of what the role is with one of our hiring clients, one essential skill we look for is curiosity. Just looking to bring curious people in. And I think with that, they're exploring the power of these medicines as part of just being a curious person. Yeah. So a minute or so left, ending on a high note, not necessarily asking you to be completely predictive, but staying with you, Natalie. You've seen, experienced, paved a lot of, participated in, worked with people in decriminalization, legalization. Are there any things going on now, or anyone else here can comment, that's very exciting, that is not too far out, that we can really latch onto and get excited about?
I'm really excited by when we look at a state like Oregon. In this room, people might be more familiar with the supervised legal psilocybin context that's moving forward, which is incredible. But not everyone knows that simultaneously, Oregon passed a bill to decriminalize all drugs, personal possession of all drugs. So for me, it's really, really exciting that we can move forward simultaneously while we're creating medical and other frameworks for psychedelic use. We're also decriminalizing drugs on the whole. I think it's really important, as powerful and magical as psychedelics can be, that we don't make kind of exceptions like this is the good drug, that's the bad drug. That can be very dangerous. So I really encourage people who that might sound crazy to kind of do some more research, read Dr. Carl Hart's books, read The New Jim Crow. There's some really powerful books out there that kind of talk a lot about drug policy in general and how so many of our drug laws come from deeply racist, not at all science-based or research-based policies. So I'm excited that that's finally kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I would second that and just touch upon harm reduction in general. Like the human condition, we like to do drugs. Like there's going to be a cocktail hour. We like that shift in consciousness. It's not going to change. So as it relates to Measure 110, which was the decriminalization of all drugs, and this is happening elsewhere, or even reflecting on a brief moment where Jeremy and Brock were sharing news of one of their portfolio companies in the keynote, CB Therapeutics, who's been contracted to create a cleaner cocaine in Canada. Like harm reduction is, I think, from a predictive answer, is going to be something more and more people come into knowledge of. And that will have a lot of effect on some of these arcane laws and drug policies that don't make sense if we take a second to look and go, wait a minute, I'm having a discussion over a glass of wine. Come on. So all that harm reduction becoming a lot more knowledgeable as a prediction in the next few years.
Some closing happy thoughts.
Yeah, listen, I'm just excited. All these people in this room, everybody up on this stage, like the conversations happening around everything, the harm reduction side, the policy side, the science side, the capital side, human capital side. That's the most important thing. It's what needs to happen. The conversations need to happen. We have the world's largest prison population here in the United States. So I think, having these conversations around this, whether it's in a medicalized clinic setting or whether it's in a recreational setting, I think just having the conversation is the biggest thing.
I'm excited about the future of these medicines and what they mean for humankind, and what they mean for mental health, what they mean for other ailments like addiction. I think decriminalization is great for harm reduction. I see that happening more and more in different countries. I know Canada is looking at that. I mean, you look at BC, and there's some states that have done that here, and other states that are looking at it, which I think is great. Making sure that we do it the right way, because it is beyond one company, and if we're all focused on the same goal, we all benefit as an industry, and the people that need it the most benefit.
Amen. Well, I'm excited about all those things, and to get to participate in this industry with people like you and have these great conversations and do these great things. It's so rewarding. I see we're out of time, but let's get some questions if there's any out there. I don't know who to choose first. No question. Please, yes.
So I come from psychedelia way before
I'm going to jump in first.
Sure. Yeah, I recall we hosted, I think technically the world's first psychedelic investor conference a little over 3 years ago. And two of the speakers were the first guy who got a psychedelic company on the NASDAQ and the founder of Decrim Nature, which was very much grow, gather, gift, right? In the room, it was remarkable. It was like they can both coexist. And they both asked each other respective questions like, do you buy into an FDA model? Yeah, that'll work. Do you buy into a grow, gather, gift model? Yeah, that'll work. So I'm always taken aback when you actually are in the space and talking to people that there's as much contention, and then I go to Twitter and it's like, oh my God, these people are going to kill each other. Then we're hanging out and we're all like hugging. So I'm not dismissing that that's not an issue, and I'm not dismissing that capitalism has the ability to pervert certain truer intentions, but I think they are and will continue to coexist and maybe support each other.
You want to jump in or you want me to? So listen, a majority of people are never going to get anything, LSD, psilocybin, whatever you want to, from somebody they don't know that isn't wearing a white coat. Like, there are just going to be a certain percentage of the population that want to get things from their doctor. They know exactly what it is, have an expectation of what it'll do. So I think that they're going to have to coexist, because a majority of the population is not going to just take things that they're not getting from, like, they've been programmed for so long. Doctor writes your prescription, you go into Walgreens, CVS, you pick that prescription up, you go home, you take it, you know exactly what's in the bottle. You're never going to change those people's mind. So I think that there's both of those things have to live side by side. And they are. I mean, we wouldn't be having conversations like this if that wasn't the case. And who knows? I mean, without decades of propaganda of that being thrown down your throat, I mean, could it be different? Yeah, possibly, but just not the world we live in today.
I really appreciate this question. And I do believe a lot of people in the industry would benefit from thinking a lot more intentionally about that, how they are approaching different companies and maybe ways that aren't just like every other industry, because I do think this is a bit different in many ways. Some of my fears are around, in our current system of capitalism, companies, especially with shareholders, have a fiduciary duty to maximize their profit, right? That's like their number one drive. So when you're doing that, inevitably, patient health outcomes might suffer in service of profit maximization, and many other things as well. On the flip side, when people are prioritizing other things and are not financially sustainable, they're not able to grow and for more people to have access to these treatments. So I personally believe there is some really delicate navigation and innovation that needs to happen. And I'm seeing it with some companies, but a lot of companies, I think, are just kind of taking traditional models and moving forward, and I'm not sure that's going to be as effective. In fact, we're seeing some research outcomes in companies like that not be as effective because they are trying to, cut corners in ways that serve simply profit maximization. I would also invite you and everyone else here to come to MAPS's giant conference we're hosting in Denver at the end of June, where we'll be really diving into these conversations in a lot more depth, as well as having many research and science stages and a number of topics. But I think this question is one that deserves lots of deep conversation and thought.
Awesome. Great question, great answer. Hate to cut the question short, as we always encourage knowledge sharing and question asking and answering, but we got to move on. We got a lot in store for you today, so let's hear it one more time for our speakers and our panelists on stage.